Hello, welcome back to Blender Sushi channel. Today I'm thinking to start a new video series. Um, it's gonna be called Blender Sushi versus. So you might have seen my previous video when I was doing a lot of live noding using Blender add-ons, animation nodes, and spare chop. There, those are two add-ons that I use with Blender a lot while doing live noding. And you probably know by now that I love procedural workflow and I love working with nodes. However, I'm thinking that um, maybe people watch my video and then they will think that Blender is kind of complicated using nodes and stuff. But that's only just a small bit about Blender. Um, in this first series, this is like a video number 0 for the series. I'm gonna talk about Blender, but I'm gonna also show you some other 3D software like Maya and Houdini. So because I actually before I used Blender, I used Maya a lot, probably since version 4.5, and that's my first 3D software. And Maya is a kind of a software that use has a little bit of has procedural workflow, but also Maya has some kind of a nice workflow where you can work without thinking about nodes. Kind of similar to Blender. Blender itself, without spare chop or animation nodes, is actually not so much of node-based system. While I will also show you Houdini, another 3D software, like a big commercial 3D software that's using mostly nodes based and it's all procedural mostly. So yeah, it's a big topic to talk about, but maybe I can have a lot of video talking about this topic. As you already know by now, um, Blender is an open source software, so and it's completely free. You can just download the latest version and install it on Windows or Mac or Linux, and it will work right away. You can use any computer, like in a library or university or your own personal computer. Even your old laptop, 5 years old, can still run Blender. Unlike Maya or Houdini, for example, that might need a higher requirement for them to run properly. But Blender will run on almost all computers. Okay, so it's open source, it's light, and you can just put it in a USB, for example, and then it will work. So where should I start? Yeah, the reason I'm making this video is because the other day I saw someone that said in the forum, he said that Blender is too difficult to learn. That's actually totally like a myth. It's not true at all. Blender is not hard to learn. Blender is a tool. 3D animation itself, like 3D animation itself is big. Uh, whether you want to pursue career in for like film or making animations or in the game industry or maybe doing other things like more interactive VR or augmented reality kind of stuff in the near future. Um, it's a big industry, and then in order to master the skill, your 3D skills, in order to work in this kind of industry, you need to understand the tool really well, and then also you need the skill, whether you are as a modeler or as an animator or a rigger or a renderer or even like a developer or more technical artist. So yeah, so Blender itself is not it's not too hard to learn. It's not that's not true. I can show you Maya and Houdini and compare the tools and see which one is more complex. Yeah. Anyway, this is kind of this is what the Versus video series is gonna be all about. I'm gonna talk about Blender and other 3D package. Not so much about comparing which one is better or best to do stuff or which one is easier, but um, I might actually use other 3D package and kind of work together, how they two might work together. So yeah, I love Blender as much as I love Maya and Houdini. Maya and Houdini are big. They're like a big commercial software, right? So they should be really powerful because you pay thousands of dollars for the license for those softwares, and they are really probably the most used in the industry. Um, I tried to also learn like Cinema 4D and 3D Max and Soft Image at some point. Cinema 4D is kind of like more for motion graphic artists, I guess, for visual, um, kind of for product design or kind of for TV spots or things like that for commercials. While Maya and Houdini is Maya is for animations and Houdini is for visual effects. But Maya and Houdini can be really, really robust for that. While Blender, of course, is still relatively young, but it's been around for a while. Anyway, I talked too much already. So once upon a time, not long ago, like 5 years ago, I started this blog, Blender Sushi, and this is when I really start everything. It's July 2011, and I was really curious with Blender. Um, so I started trying to use it, and then at the time I was really comparing Blender with Maya, basically. And at the beginning, I only touch Blender particles, and slowly I start to start looking into Blender Grease Pencil. I really like Grease Pencil, and then Blender rendering, how it can render particles, and then continue on. I started to look into particle instancing in Blender. So Blender particle is relatively, although it's limited, but Blender particles also kind of powerful in its own way. And then Blender rendering also kind of something that I'm super interested in. Unlike Maya renderer, like the internal renderer, is basically pretty much it's pretty bad actually. Maya renderer is probably the worst. I shouldn't say that, but Maya renderer has been very underdeveloped for a long time, and at some point Maya turned into Mental Ray, and then Maya has RenderMan for renderer at some point, and then so RenderMan for Maya was really big at the time, like few years back ago, and then before later on Arnold kind of becoming popular in the industry, Arnold and V-Ray, which is more like physically based, which is more like a Blender cycles today. But Blender internal, if I'm talking about Blender internal is really powerful. It can render smoke and particles. Yeah, so Blender is really interesting. I also need to mention that since this is Blender Sushi and I will be Blender centric most of the time. Yeah, so this is Blender Sushi, and I post a lot about a lot of topics. Before later on, I started to get interested with Blender drivers, more technical stuff, and Blender helped me to give confidence on learning Python as well, because Blender scripting is using Python as a language. So I have zero background in programming at some point, but then so I learned programming on my own, and Blender kind of pushed me that way. So there's also a little bit about OSL. At some point, I really looked into OSL. Before later on, I found SpreadShop in Blender. It's an add-on, but SpreadShop allows me to use procedural, like a node-based workflow, just inside Blender. So Blender doesn't have that before, but since SpreadShop is there and then animation nodes, I was really so into animation nodes, and then I didn't write much about animation nodes in a blog post, but I make live noding, so that's the whole history of Blender for me. So if you wanna start using Blender, so I'm thinking if you're watching this video, you might be thinking, you probably you might never use 3D before, or you might have used 3D software, other 3D software before, like maybe 3D Max or Cinema 4D or Maya or Houdini, and maybe you want to use Blender at some point. Yeah, I think Blender should be the universal language of all 3D artists, regardless how cool your 3D software you're using. You probably need to learn Blender at some point, because it is always available and you can just download the latest. The current Blender is Blender version 2.78, and this is the latest, and it's not yet 2.8, and it's not yet Blender 3.0. So Blender is kind of humble in a way. It's developing 3D softwares. People might think it's kind of like a slow development, but not really, because Blender is kind of like one 3D software that doesn't update the version. If they just change the interface, like I remember Maya, at some point Maya was just updating the interface, and they call it Maya 2011 or Maya 2012. I can't remember. They only upgrade the interface. They don't really add anything into it. And Maya, I can't remember. So Maya is like version 2017 now, and I think Maya 2010 or 2011 is when they really make changes to the interface. But between Maya 4.5 to latest Maya, they only add like they add like a big feature like a bit frost, or they add Arnold renderer, or Maya Fluid. They maybe upgrade Maya Fluid, but they didn't really. If you are paying for a license for Maya, it's probably not worth upgrading if they are only upgrading the interface or things like that. Yeah, so yeah, sometimes I have this love-hate things with Maya as a tool. Well, anyway, in this video I will kind of talk about the user interface. If you think Blender is difficult or too hard to learn, it's not true. Once again, I'll show you. Okay, I'll show you what's really too difficult to learn. So you start from, if you want to start with Blender, of course you need to download the software. You just Google download Blender, and the first one should be pointing to the right website from blender.org, and you should be taken to this page. and you see the latest and you download the one that works for you. You probably want the Windows 64-bit. Then you can still use 32-bit. I know that in some libraries in here they still use 32-bit computer. You can download for Mac OS X or Linux. It will work. For this recording session, I'm using Blender in Windows 7, 64-bit. So just download Blender. You can download the zip or the installations. After a while, you might actually want to download the zip, and because with the zip you can download like older version of Blender. It depends on your usage. So yeah, just download Blender and then you can get started right away. And if you open Blender, this is going to be the first screen you see. Okay. If you actually a few years ago, before 2011, maybe 2010, Blender 2.49 is actually really different. Let me open up an older version of Blender. So the good thing about Blender is you can always go back version and you can still run it, no problem. This is an older version of Blender. This is Blender 2.49, 2.49B, and this is how it looks before. I remember I actually opened this version of Blender at some point, and I found the interface. This is kind of hard to learn. This is 2.49. However, from 2.5 for Blender 2.5 and onwards until today, Blender 2.7, the interface is much easier to learn. So previously Blender looks like this, and then when we are tumbling, it's so easy to lose kind of orientations. But this is how the Blender artist used to work, and this is some people are still using Blender 2.49 just for maybe for their research reason or for Python compatibility, because Blender 2.49 is still using Python version 2.7, I think. Yeah. So yeah, just showing you this older version of Blender. This is like the legacy, Blender legacy. This is like 5 or 6 years ago or more. But this is the latest Blender, and it's much more user-friendly, especially for new 3D artists, like more like a younger 3D artists. If you have used other software like Maya or Houdini, this latest version should be much easier in terms of interface. Yeah, so I actually have Maya open, and I have Houdini open as well, and I will compare these three, but I'm not really gonna talk about all the interface per se, but just lightly touching on each one of them. So where should I start? Blender, okay, or maybe I should start with Maya. Okay, this is Maya, and this is they are highlighting the new versions. I found that maybe you're using Blender mostly. Maybe Blender is your first tool and you never had access to other 3D software for all kind of reasons. Maybe at some point you might need to learn other 3D package, like the more commercial package like Maya or Houdini as well. Maybe, but I'm just showing it to you. Maybe having Blender and Maya or Houdini will help. Because eventually, like, let's say you're learning photography and you're using different camera. If you are a really good photographer, you can use any camera basically. Tool is just a tool, you know, but you definitely have one tool that you always have with you all the time. Like in my case, I carry my iPhone all the time, so iPhone is my camera, you know, and I love my iPhone. So you might be using Android phone. Um, anyway, in this case for 3D software, um, Blender is my secret, like it's my personal favorite. Blender, I always have Blender all the time, and I can install it on any computer easy. While with Maya and Houdini, I will always need to worry about license. Okay, even though they have like a free student license nowadays, free educational license, you can't use it for commercial. Just always remember that. With Maya and Houdini, you always need a license. If you are an indie artist and you just want to make a portfolio, of course, yeah, you can use Maya and Houdini, like the non-commercial version. But if you want to make money using this tool, you need a license. But with Blender, you can use it anytime. Okay. All right. So that's 20 minutes talk about nothing. Basically, yeah. Let's start with Blender interface. Okay, wait. I don't know which one I should start first. Maybe with Maya because Maya is my first software of choice. I actually learned Maya back in the uni. Um, yeah, let's get started. Maya. So Maya interface looks like this. Maybe I should have Blender and Maya side by side. So yeah, that's kind of nice. Okay, so again, if you say Blender is too difficult, I don't know what's too difficult for you, really. Maybe you never seen someone, maybe someone need to sit with you and talk about Blender. Maybe the hardest part about Blender, okay, the hardest part is like Blender documentations. There is Blender doesn't really have like a manual. Okay, there's a manual here which will take you to Blender manual about Blender. Okay, this is okay. I lied. I think Blender actually have manual, and it should be a lot better now. Um, so yeah, if you first starting to use Blender, remember that you have the manual. You have, and then let me show you. Let me grab this web page. Other than manual, I also need to show you there's a website called blenderartist.org. This is a good forum to look for Blender answers, like a lot of threads about all kind of topics in Blender. You can also look at Blender Stack Exchange. So if you have any question about Blender, if you ask question nicely, there will be someone who will answer your question. I don't know if maybe if you're like a beginner and you're using Blender for the first time, you will have a lot of questions. And for newbies, I guess what I want to say is Blender is hard if you don't want to push yourself to like a self-taught, because most of Blender artists, I think, self himself or herself at the beginning. So that's the thing, because it's a open source. But anyway, Blender over the last 5 years, I think the number of Blender video tutorials have increased. And if you check on YouTube and search for Blender tutorial and Blender 3D tutorials. You will find a lot of video tutorials for it. Okay, where was I? Comparing Blender interface with Maya interface. Okay, this is the first. The first thing you see when you open both software. I also have Houdini. Houdini. Yeah, I'll come back to Houdini. So this is Blender, and you have a basically you have a grid. This is a 3D grid. You have a lamp and you have camera, and you have this 3D cursor. Okay, that's what's special about Blender. You always have this tree when you first open it, and you have this outliner that's kind of laying down all the objects in the scene as like an outline, like a text that you can select, and you can control the visibility, etc. And you have this this is called property panel, and property panel have a lot of tabs, and they are kind of context sensitive, so whatever you're selecting will change this property panel. And you also have this side panel. This is the default side panel. There's another panel here. What do they call it? This is transform panel. I just call it like left panel and right panel, and you can use NT hotkey. You will find out that Blender has a lot of interesting hotkey, and you will find out more about it the more you use Blender. And then you have this timeline down here to play back your animations. If you have animations in the scene, this is the playback button. Yeah, like any 3D package. And so, Blender menu. There's this on the top. You have Blender menu bar, like in any 3D in any software you will see this menu, but Blender doesn't have much. Actually, Blender has the most minimum menu. You only have the usual file menu, like to create a new document or open Blender file, save, user preference, which is this guy, user preference, and then import export. Blender 2.78 has Alembic import and export, so that's nice. And how you deal with external data, and quit button. Render, okay, it has the render menu, very useful, and the window just to toggle full screen, save screenshot, etc. Toggle window system console, like Blender has this system console. There's a help, and if you want to report a bug or something. That's all about Blender menu bar. But here on the top, you will have this like a preset, like the default layout. You have the default, which is what you're seeing now. You have other layout like animations, where you can see the graph editor, and you can see the timeline. You can see the 3D view here, and the outliner, property panel, and you have the scripting. Yeah, all kind of panel basically. You even have this Python console, and you have text. This is to write text. And if you save, if you write anything, it will save with the Blender files. And you also have this secret menu if you're doing scripting, UV editing, and all kind of stuff. Basically, and you also have this 3D view full, which shows nothing. If you're like a super advanced Blender user, you might actually work like this, and you turn on the panel, and you you split the layout as you need it. So this is the 3D view panel, full panel. This is the, it shows nothing, only the 3D. And you can see the transform and rotations, grease pencil, and all kind of option related to the scene. The actual panel itself, if I split the panel, I can split it like this, and I can start showing all the options of the panel. So this is actually all the panels that's available in Blender. Python console, file browser, info node, user preference, etc. all available, and you can change it to anything to any layout that you want. Timeline, for example, so that's become your animation scrubbing timeline. Display at the moment is only showing only the rendered objects. So that's a Blender. Basically, that's Blender interface. It's not that complicated. It's very similar to Maya actually. This is Maya, and then if I really want to make this like Blender, I can put a cube like that. I can increase the size of the cube. Yeah, maybe make it 3 by 3, and then I can create a light, and create a camera. So that's Maya. And with Maya, actually, you only can have 4 panel being split at one time. You have in Maya, you also have similar to Blender. You have this like a preset kind of layout, modeling, rigging, animations, effects, etc. Or you can like customize your own. But that's changing only the menu, and while for the panel itself, you change it using this, either split it like 4 like this, or maybe 2 side by side, or top and bottom from here. 2 pane side by side, or 2 pane stacked. So that's Maya. So you only can have like 4 panel at maximum. What's special about Maya is that Maya has this shelf bar, or what do they call it? I forgot. But this has a lot of buttons. Okay, and this is one thing about Maya. Maya shelf is very customizable. It's so easy to customize. So that's one thing that's Maya is powerful at, is for this customization. It comes with all this preset, but mostly if you're using Maya for a while, you will start to create your own shelf button. By default, Blender doesn't have that kind of feature. So that's Maya. Maya has a timeline here, similar to Blender, and Maya has all kind of panels as well, which is shown here. Dope sheet, graph editors, all kind of Maya panel. On the right side, you can see Maya this kind of like a channel what do they call it? Channel bar? I think it's a channel box. Okay, they call it channel box. But with Maya, you can see they kind of splitting. Okay, with Blender, if we go back to the default view, with Blender, we can see the properties all the time, and we also have this kind of animation panel right here that's can be hidden by, can be toggled by holding N, like tapping N. So that's if you're animating, you might want to see this. You can actually hide the rest. With Maya, you have this kind of panel. If you want to see more about this object, Control A will show attribute editor, and you can see a lot more. And Maya is different because it's mostly under the hood. Maya is actually like a node-based program, and I can show you real quick if I turn on the graph editor window. Oh, actually not graph editor. See, I haven't used Maya for a while actually. This is Maya 2017, and I just installed it just now. What you want to see is actually either the hypergraph or either the hypershade or the node editor. This is Maya under the hood, and if I select an object and graph it, Maya has become a little bit too complicated, I think. Select object and then graph the object. In the past, it's really so much simpler. Let me check. Where did I forgot? Wow. It's only showing the shader now. I used to be able to select an object and can see the input and output and stuff. Wow, Maya has changed a lot since last time. Let me open up Houdini actually. Let me open up Houdini. That's the Houdini interface. Is now you look at it and it's kind of similar to Maya as well, similar to Blender as well. There's a shelf on top, and there is this kind of a network. This is to work with the node inside Houdini. let's turn this Houdini layout so it's matching Blender. Let's create a box in Houdini and create a point light. Put it up above, and then create a camera. All right. So we have a box, we have point light, and we have camera. This is Houdini interface. If we want to see the actual objects in Houdini it's actually Houdini is the, if I've shown you in Blender, I'm using sphere chalk and animation nodes to show you the procedural workflow. Houdini is basically everything is procedural and everything is node. If we go inside an object, like this box object, if I double click or tap on I can go inside an object, and this is an actual node. This is like in a Blender in sphere chalk or animation nodes. This node basically creates an object, and I can change the size and change the divisions. Let me change it to flat shaded or flat with a wire. Okay, that's better look. Maybe I open older version of Maya. Maya 2017 is really different. I was a little bit surprised. I haven't used it. I just installed it actually. So this is Houdini, and in Houdini you can, everything is node basically. Let's say you wanna subdivide. Let's see, subdivide. You create a subdivide node, and you plug in an input and then subdivide the node. That's what you do in Houdini. So each object like this always have like the typical transform, like translate, rotate, and scale. That's kind of basic on any 3D package. But inside Houdini is always like nodes, and you can have a lot of these nodes and kind of really complex looking nodes. And because Houdini is all procedural, so I'm opening an older version of Maya. So this is the one I used to work with, changing the color of background. So again, back to Maya. I want to show you, okay, previously, this is how Maya used to work, okay? You can have cube and you can create a light, and you can create a camera. So this is just like in Blender, pretty much. One thing that many people think Blender is difficult is actually, it could be the way it works. Blender works with a 3D view. When I first used Blender, I actually surprised that, for example, I have view of cube, and I was surprised that left mouse button is not select, unlike in in other 3D package. In other 3D package, left click is selecting, and then left drag is to create a box selections. In Blender, that's not how you work. Although you can change it into like a 3D Max or Maya. Blender doesn't work like that. So this is probably the first gotcha. Only if you use other 3D software. Okay, if Blender is your first 3D package, you will get used to using right click for selecting, but it's only in this kind of object level. Okay, left click is actually this 3D cursor. Okay, 3D cursor, you can zero it out over here. So sorry, 0. So left click is to place the 3D cursor. Many people, many artists or many Blender users, first-time Blender user will get shocked because of this reason. It's really, maybe this is the one of the thing that kind of make Blender feels a little bit difficult, but I didn't quite get that. Oh, sorry, I just called Siri by accident. So back to this, when working in 3D view, Blender left click is to place the 3D cursor. This 3D cursor, the first use of this 3D cursor is if you click on it, so anywhere in the 3D, and then you if I create like a monkey head, it will place it at the location of the 3D cursor. If I click there and then create another cube, it will place it there. And this 3D cursor will start to get handy after a while. I reckon if you use Blender for a few weeks, you will start to get use of this idea. So in the 3D view, left click is not selecting, okay? If you want to select something, it's actually right click. So right click is select an object. I already kind of get used to it, so when I switch to Blender, I know that I need to use right click, so it's not a big deal. You can actually switch to that kind of workflow, while in Houdini or in Maya, left click is select very much. Although in Houdini, if you tap escape and then you are in this view, I think the reason being that left is not selecting. It's like kind of like in Houdini. In Houdini, if you press escape and you're in the top level, left click is not selecting it. Left click is to do this tumbling. Left mouse to do tumble, middle to pan, and right to do dolly. Control Alt left to box zoom. Yeah, all kind of different hotkeys, you know. Every 3D package has like different way of working in 3D view. In Maya is my first 3D software, so I get used to using Alt left mouse button to tumble, Alt middle mouse to pan, Alt right click or the scroll to zoom in, zoom out. While in Blender, left click, in 3D view, left click is not select, but left click you can do the usual transformations. This is the 3D view, like the object level. Middle mouse button is to tumble. Scroll is to zoom in, zoom out. Control and middle mouse button is to zoom in and zoom out. And right click is to select. If you want to move this object, the shortcut is the G. G is to grab an object. Let's see. You can also use this panel if you're using Blender for the first time. Translate. You can hover over it and you can see translate shortcut G. But remember to use right click. And shift click is still the same. You can select multiple objects that way. And shift D is to duplicate. Similar in Maya actually. Select and shift D is actually to duplicate, and then in Maya you tap W and then you move the object. In Blender you use right mouse button, click, and then select a bunch of object. Shift D and then it will duplicate the objects, and it's you're kind of grabbing the objects and then you place it. So Blender is a little bit more efficient that way. So that's a Blender, that's Maya. Let's see, I have a note here that I write down what I should talk about. It's almost like 1 hour total. Maybe I should finish it at 1 hour, so I have 10 minutes left. If I have these top 5 questions, which one actually crashes more often, or is Blender like a stable? Blender is actually the most stable 3D package that I ever know. I use Maya and Houdini, and Maya is the most unstable 3D software. This is the one that is very easy to crash when you're using Maya for all kind of reason. Maybe rendering, if you're rendering using RenderMan, it might crash. If you're doing a modeling, it might crash suddenly and you don't have a backup. So Maya will crash a lot. Okay, this is Maya. This is the most unstable 3D software ever. Of course, Maya is flexible, but then Maya is very unstable as well. Just to keep that in mind. Another question, which one is the most difficult to learn? Again, Blender is not the most difficult 3D software to learn. In fact, Houdini is probably the most difficult to learn. Don't believe if Houdini is easy. Houdini is really, really hard. It looks simple because you're just using nodes and connecting nodes, but really here you're actually doing a visual programming. Houdini is really, really hard. This is the hardest, but you can, of course, you can do a lot here. Let's see what else I can. Let's see. Probably the most powerful one, grid. If I create a grid here, this is inside one object. Okay, in Houdini, everything is nodes. It's kind of like having a sphere chop or animation nodes. If you are using Blender and been following my live noding video, so I'm kind of like a reverse. I imagine if I'm like a Blender artist and I use sphere chop and animation nodes, and then I look at Houdini and Maya. Houdini is, of course, like I said, Houdini is all procedural and everything is node. If I make a copy real quick, copy node will expect a template and then primitive to copy. So if I, for the template, if I use grid and if I use box and turn on the copy, now I have a bunch of copy of the box. Let me show it to you. So that's this is where Houdini is really powerful. Houdini can generate instance magic, almost like auto-magically, like everything you can think of using sphere chop or animation nodes can be done inside Houdini. Maybe more, sometimes a little bit more complex using Houdini compared to sphere chop or animation nodes. At some point, maybe I will just talk about Houdini and then comparing it with animation nodes and sphere chop. It's almost like 3 different software. Okay, sphere chop and animation nodes, and the way it approaches procedurality. So that's Houdini. If we go up to the top level, I can select the point and then move the points. Yeah, kind of lost the point. Working, I found that working Houdini is actually I learned Houdini on my own. There's only a few books talk about Houdini. The best one is The Magic of Houdini, but it's really, really old and they haven't updated. Houdini is probably the most complex because Um, you need to learn the software by just by looking at the video online, and then you look at it, and then you might go to forum like Odd Force forum, where all the master Houdini is kind of living. Houdini artists are really like they're very technical minded people. I don't know many animators that use Houdini, but Houdini can be also for like a normal character animations. Um, which leads to the next question: which one is the best for animations? My answer will be Maya and Blender, but this is it depends. For character animations, I think Maya and Blender are the most animators friendly. Houdini is the best for procedural animation. Actually, for procedural animation, maybe Maya and Houdini. But Blender using spreadshock and animation nodes are probably kind of equivalent or kind of nearing Maya and Houdini. Of course, it's not really fair comparison because Blender animation nodes and spreadshock and animation nodes are just an add-on, and it was only developed by few developers, while Houdini and Maya is developed by many developers. It's a commercial package, and you pay a lot for the license for those two. Those two really should be doing it really well, especially for animation and or procedural. For which one is the best for visual effects? Again, it depends on the need. They are all pretty good, although like things like Houdini and Maya has it's been used in the industry, and then so it has a lot of tools created by studio like Maya, like in older version of Maya. This is the older version. Again, I'm going back to the older version because I want to show you something with Maya Hypershade. So this is the old Maya Hypershade, and in the old version, I can select an object and then I can graph it. So I can see. Let's select this one. This is the original cube, and I can graph the cube, and I can see this is like in Houdini. You have a node, and you have the final result, and this is node. You can control the divisions, the size, the division. Let me show you the wireframe. So this is where Maya some has a procedurality underneath, although it's not like Houdini. Houdini is really powerful in terms of procedurality. Maya is not so powerful this way, but if you are using Maya has this plugin called Maya Soup, which is kind of like a Houdini underneath inside Maya. It was developed by Peter Shipkoff at some point, and I really dig this node, these plugins for Maya, and this is where Maya and Soup is really kind of powerful, but the node-based workflow inside Maya can be difficult to work with. Yeah, so that's why when things get a little bit more confusing. Which one is the best for rendering? The best for rendering. Okay. Houdini has powerful rendering called Mantra. Let's say like if I want to render this guy out, I think I can just hit a render somewhere. Okay, this guy. Right click. If I just click on it, it should render. Or maybe I need to create a camera first. Oh no, it's generating a camera, render camera for me, and then it's being displayed in this mplay. So this is Houdini rendering, and let's switch to Maya. Maya rendering. Maya, the latest Maya, I know it has Arnold in it. Used to be Mental Ray. Maya is a little bit bloated. I think it has too much things in it at this point, where it's get to the point is Maya is becoming so confusing a little bit. But I can also, Maya has nice thing as well, you know, like for character rigging and animations. Maya is really super friendly, and I don't know, it's a little bit more like 3D Max now in terms of interface. I have to study this. I don't know. Maybe I'll look into Maya 2017. If I go back to older version of Maya, which is this version 2015, Surface Pack 6. This is how it looks. Render. Let's see. Render settings. This is Maya 2015. It has Maya software, Maya hardware, vector. It has Mental Ray renderer as well. But Maya default renderer is a little bit ugly and boring. It doesn't have things like ambient occlusion and stuff. While with Blender, this is the default Blender renderer. If you render it out, okay, where's the default camera? It's looking that way. I need to put the camera looking into the 3D objects. So I can go to, there's actually a shortcut for it. So this is the render camera here, and this is what we are seeing. Control Alt 0, and the active camera now move to this guy, and then if I can lock the active camera into this guy, and now we can render. So this is Blender default renderer. Nothing seems to be really special, but if we render it with ambient occlusion on, we get much better looking. Maybe not too much. It's gonna be a little bit flat. So that's Blender render. And Blender render, this is like the internal render. This is the old renderer of Blender, and it's already pretty powerful. And you can render things like subsurface scattering material, those kind of stuff. But Blender also have the new renderer. It's called Blender Cycles renderer, and this is like a little bit like Arnold. This is a physically based renderer. It's not like Mental Ray of Maya that Maya just put inside Maya at some point. Blender Cycles, I also think Blender Cycles is really good, and it's really user friendly, I think. So if I switch to Cycle renderer now, and maybe apply some material. Let's see. Let me switch to compositing, and okay, this is our 3D view. This is to create a material. Let me quickly set up material, like switch to material panel, create a material. This is gonna be the diffuse. Maybe I can use glass. And for this guy, use nodes, get a different color. And link to material, and I can render it right away. And this is Blender Cycles renderer. It's a physically based. and I can kind of preview the render as we are working on it. This object is currently maybe instead of glass I can use either like metal, oh maybe what is it called, glossy. So by default the monkey is kind of low resolutions, but I can add subdivisions using a modifier, Control 3, and make it smooth. And let's take a look in render. So this is what we got. This is a Blender cycle render. I can also use like things like if I have a plane and then I turn it into emitter, emission, so maybe give it like a yellow kind of color. It's gonna be our light. Light source, okay. And I can increase the strength right here. So this is Blender Cycles physically based lighting. You see how good it is? Yeah. If we switch to Houdini, Houdini also have the physically based kind of rendering using Mantra renderer. Mantra renderer is Houdini's own renderer. It can be really powerful, can be a little bit slow, but it's also, I always think Houdini is really, really powerful, but also really, really complex. So in terms of artist friendly, Blender is the most friendly. That's why it's just my opinion. So which one is the most balanced? The most balanced in terms of kind of the friendliness. I want to say that Blender is the most balanced of everything. Blender, and because Blender, it might look like this is like a Blender is open source, right? It's free, and then the developers of Blender Foundation can keep going basically because of donations and because of the Blender Cloud. If you're like a monthly subscriber for Blender Cloud, you will get like a Blender video tutorials, how to, like a you might also get like assets for Blender projects, and you're paying like, I don't know, you pay like few euro for it. That's how Blender Foundation can keep developing Blender. While with Maya and Houdini, it's a license. It's a commercial software. It's really I don't want to say it's expensive, but it's a commercial software. We know it. They should have a lot of money, but they use the money for commercial and all kind of stuff. But anyway, it's not about the commercials or open source, but I'm saying that in terms of user friendly and the most balanced, I think Blender has everything's very, very balanced. It has the animation feature, it has compositing feature, and it has actually Blender game engine as well, and scripting and video editing, so you can do all the productions just inside Blender. While with Maya and Houdini, you might use Nuke. You can do a little bit of compositing in Houdini, and Maya not so much. You can use hypershades maybe for compositing. Blender has motion tracking. Blender has just a lot of features that you might not think of. Yeah, so Blender is the best all-rounder. It's kind of like the Roger Federer of 3D, even though it's the open source. Maya can be all-rounder as well. Maya has a little bit of procedurality. Um, Maya has mail scripting. It has mail scripting and a Python scripting. I can't remember which Python version of is this. Maybe still version 2, but Blender is using Python 3. Yeah, but then again, like I said, it's totally up to the artist whether maybe you are also using Cinema 4D. I don't use Cinema 4D, so I don't know. There are lots of Blender artists actually using Cinema 4D as a tool. Um, yeah, so that's pretty much what I want to talk about. So back to default. Mm, I can probably talk about more about the interface, but let me think. It's already over 1 hour. Maybe I can talk for another. Let's make it like a little bit longer. Let's see. Okay, user interface. Houdini. I already said that Houdini is the most complex. It's really powerful underneath this guy. Okay, let's maybe show the strength of each one of these guys. So, um, Maya has this hot. I can't remember this as a hot key or the spacebar hotkey, and like a kind of like a pie menu, similar to Blender. It's actually this is something that I miss when using Blender, but recently Blender has the pie menu, so switch on pie menu, menu officials. If I enable pie menu now, I can have this kind of pie menu, like just like in Maya. So in Maya, if I want to switch to the front view, tap spacebar, front view, tap spacebar, maybe top view, tap spacebar, right view, and back to perspective view. With a pie menu in Blender, you also have that. This is kind of fairly new, but many Blender artists actually get used to using the numpad. So with the numpad 1, 2, 3, 4, we can switch really quickly. I actually really like this a lot. The numpad, if we use 1, 1, 2, 3, so 1 is front, 3 is right, this is 7 is top, 9 is user perspective, I think. But 5 is switching between orthogonal, orthographic, and perspective. So 1, 3, but now these days you can use Q and then you have this menu. And what else? There's a Blender has this spacebar kind of menu. If you are not sure, let's say you wanna turn one cube into like a with a smoke effect, you can tap spacebar and then quick smoke, and then you have now like a quick smoke simulations. So that's a blend spacebar and type anything. This to make a smooth object. And what else? And Blender has in order to edit an object, you go to maybe edit mode. Maybe you want to do some sculpting, you go to sculpt mode, or paint the vertex, or you do the texture painting. So this is the other mode. The one you use if you're doing modeling. Maybe you want to model this cube. You go to edit mode, you hit tab and go to edit mode, and then now you can work with the vertices or work with edges or face. In Maya, you do that by tapping, if I'm not wrong, it's like